Welcome to the RealP3 Podcast, now co-hosted by myself, Casey Bradley, and my esteemed colleague, Philip Johan Oldendahl from Zimbabwe. As we reintroduce the global agribusiness dimension to the RealP3, we aim to connect you with extraordinary individuals who inspire us to become unstoppable in both life and business. While I continue to shed light on the latest in animal nutrition and health, focusing on the U.S. perspective, Johan will open the doors to his vast global network as a Neufeld scholar. Embark with us on this enriched journey of discovery and practical insights. Our expanded view will navigate through the intricate world of agribusiness, powered by the collaborative efforts of Animistic and Swine Nutrition Management. This podcast is your bridge to groundbreaking ideas in animal nutrition, agriculture, and beyond, promising episodes that are not only enlightening, but deeply inspiring. Tune in to grow and transform with us. Welcome to the RealP3 Podcast, where science and heart converge, empowering knowledge to spring into action.
Wow, this is incredible to have my friend Diego on the RealP3 Podcast, two swine nutritionists, and we're going to be talking about pet nutrition, even with the pigs in the background for each of us. So Diego, can we start out and let you kind of tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your background and your company that you work with?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here today. I'm Diego, and I am a trained swine nutritionist. I did my bachelor's from University of the Philippines, where I'm from. And then I did my master's and PhD at University of Illinois under Hanstein. So I am a swine nutritionist, but I have recently started exploring the world of companion animal nutrition. And that is only possible because I work for a great company that allows me that flexibility. I have not completely let go of my responsibilities with other livestock species, but I am now spending some time on the companion animal world. And I did allude to my company a little bit. I work for a company that specializes in plant extracts. So we're in food and beverage, nutraceuticals, animal nutrition and health. And so we found some synergies there between what we do on the human side and the livestock side to what we believe we can contribute on the pet nutrition space. So that is why we're here today.
And technically, AVT Natural was a customer of mine for a long time on and off. I've taken some of my training courses and I've done some value propositions for pigs of all things before your time, Diego. So very familiar with their company, very well respected in my mind, and enjoy working with the group. And so it's really kind of funny. We're swine nutritionists and we've reconnected in our professional lives again for pet nutrition to help my clients. And I called you, you're like, of course I could make that, because I knew you guys were kind of the botanical experts, and it's been fun. But can you kind of give me some learning curves from going from livestock to companion animal nutrition? Because I've had my own as well, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very interesting question. The long story short, I think it's been quite a ride, but surprisingly, the differences are very little, in my humble opinion. I mean, in terms of, requirements, formulations, regulatory issues, ingredients that we use, they are a little different. But when you think about nutritional concepts, they're all the same. So a lot of the little nuances that are new to me have been confusing, but I think with a solid, background in nutrition has helped tremendously.
No, I would agree. I think one of my biggest learning curves is I'm working with a lot of pet food clients who are startups just getting involved. And they have this idea And it's solely around, I have a dog or a cat and I want to make a better product. It's almost like we have these startups coming. It's such a growing revenue stream, but it's also this distrust into companies that we work with every day of thinking we're doing things right, formulating right, bringing the best diets we can have. But because of the misinformation out there or certain influencers, we're kind of seen as the enemy. And so I think that's a hard take for me working with trying to help startups because I want people to grow and succeed like me, but also having to, I work with what they consider maybe their enemy or somebody not doing it right. And kind of what do you see in that trend of pet food and what you've been involved with?
No, that's definitely an experience I've had also. I'm also a pet owner. I have a little munchkin named Whimsy. And, so I kind of know what it is to be like what do you call this? Like the end consumer.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the store, you have shelves and shelves of pet food, and now you're bogged down with what pet food do I buy? And I think there one issue that we have in this industry, and we also have this on in the swine and other livestock industries, is like you alluded to, misinformation. There in this day and age, it's so easy to disseminate information, and not all of them are correct, right? And so that is why I think the industry as a whole need to be better at conveying the science, conveying what that means, showing what we do is what we believe is best for our pets. I mean, I have a pet of my own, and I only want what's best for her. And that is enough motivation for me to really try to learn everything that I need to make decisions that will influence a potential diet that my dog will eventually eat.
Yeah, I was going to say just yesterday, I went into the pet store because Animistic now officially owns 7 cats that are growing out to be our testing colony. And I was trying to find the biggest bag of kitten food I could find for the best price. And all the diets out there have to be AFCO approved levels or nutrient recommendations. But then they have all this other fancy labeling. So I would say that's kind of one of the biggest things I see different and challenged as a pet owner of like, what do I choose? Because if we go into formulation, I don't get upset if my label reads chicken byproduct versus chicken breast. And some pet owners do. And I think that's kind of the disinformation out there that it may be chicken byproduct, but they think it's some nasty, awful thing, but it's actually been processed in a way our dogs can consume it. But from a formulation perspective and working with you, we really understand fat stability really well, protein stability, vitamin stability, all of that when it comes to swine nutrition, what we were taught. But it's a different ball game when you have, I think you called it in our last meeting, Diego, there's so many ingredients in that formula. And I'm going compared to corn, soybean meal, and a VTM maybe that we have in the pig diets. But kind of what have you seen on a formulation standpoint, and how are you helping support that?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Natural OMRI listed clay additives are revolutionizing how we look at biotoxin, moisture, and bacterial mitigation. The industry is shifting towards new, non-pharmaceutical solutions to these age-old challenges. Profile Products specializes in natural solutions to support environmental and digestive health that promote growth and performance. Visit profileanimalhealth.com to learn more. Expert support and global distribution. profileanimalhealth.com.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nail there. There's a lot more flexibility, I think, in pet food formulation. I mean, in a way, depends on what type of diet you're formulating. But, you know, one of the factors there is we're the requirements for pets as a whole is a little bit more on the gray area compared with what we have on the livestock side. So that contributes to the kind of broadness of how we formulate pet diets. Just because the established requirements are a little less precise, a little less accurate. So, especially when you think about some of these, what I consider novel diets, if you look at the ingredients list, would you ever feed salmon to a pig? Or would you ever feed elk? I mean, you could, but when we don't really take into account least cost formulation in pet food diets as much as we do in livestock. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think yeah, it's fun when you look at formulations and you look at the ingredients on there and you see ingredients that you don't typically see in corn soy based diets. You have your brown rice, you have your carrots, you have peas, you have sweet potato. So that makes it fun, and at the same time sometimes overwhelming. so
It
yeah,
is challenging because a lot of times my clients are like, these would be the really nice to have. And you can build on there, and you sometimes have to argue to say, no, we can't have that ingredient. And if it's not AFCO approved, I can use that language. But trying to find amino acid profiles on different ingredients and working through test formulations and prototypes, I would say I really struggle to hit a legal label because amino acid profiles are so expensive. But when we look into some of these other dog foods that we would say are more the economic dog foods that use soybean meal, chicken meal, and all that, there's a lot of reference articles and information out there on the amino acid profile, the energy profile. But it's almost a shot in the dark of some of these formulation projects because, as we know, corn is so different depending on where it's grown, and let alone we have to just take one value we have on sweet potatoes and try to make that work. And so I would say, on a formulation perspective, that's been my number one challenge for startups versus I'm sure Hills and Simmons and all them have a huge nutrient database and regularly update their nutrients, but helping support a smaller startup dog company or a cat food company, even if it's a supplement or a full feed, is having access to that database. And so that goes back to I'm so glad I participated in the National Animal Nutrition Program and trying to accumulate as much information as I can, and the work that you guys did at Illinois on digestibility and stuff. And so I almost have to cross-reference the pig data for the dog data.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is why the work that individuals such as yourself do is so important for, like you said, these startup companies. Like, they don't have that knowledge, but then they're still feeding hundreds, thousands of pets out there. If they don't have that background, you make a little bit of a mistake, then that could exacerbate a lot of problems. And I think one of the things that we have to be careful about in this industry is humans see the effects, however subtle it is, on their animals because they see them every day. As much as we want to be at the barn every day and see every single pig and be able to distinguish this pig from yesterday and how it looks like today, we can't do that. I mean, maybe with new technologies, AI and video imaging, maybe, but with that factor plus the emotional aspect of the pet owner, if you see something that you don't believe is normal, you always associate that with what is new. And typically that is the diet. And so the work of the nutritionist is so important, especially in this industry, because of that danger of having backlash from the end consumer. So that is why we cannot take that job lightly, right?
Oh no. You want to talk about my anxiety level? It's like I finished my PhD all over again. I'm a brand new nutritionist and concerned with that I'm going to kill a pig or something and I'm going to get a phone call. Because I remember, early in my career, my 14-year-old goat ate your food and then he died. And I'm like, he died because he was 14 and probably went and ate something metal out in the field. But, you know, things like that I have gotten early in my career. And I'm like, man, pet owners, lawsuits. Do I have enough professional liability insurance?
Yeah,
Like,
well,
losing sleep again over this, but I think one of the things I wanted to talk about is manufacturing adjustments. And I mentioned that because manufacturing pet food is totally different. And then we're going to say most of our customers are putting this constraint on us. They have to be all natural ingredients. If you put a chemical name on something, it's like, oh my goodness, this is not kosher. And that's kind of where we're playing in. And can you kind of talk a little bit about some manufacturing and shelf stability and things that we have to do? Because these pigs aren't, like pigs are eating our feed within a month. So we don't really have to worry about as much shelf stability as we do with a dog food. I think the AFCO requirement is almost a 2-year shelf stability on that. And then kind of how does your company play that role and what have you guys been evaluating?
right. So talk about learning curve. This is probably the one that gave me the steepest learning is the manufacturing part. Because in swine, like you said, they'll eat the diet that was manufactured within a month. But then you add another factor into that. When you talk about feed format, you have what? Mash versus pellet versus, you have wet versus dry versus wet and dry. When you talk about pets, for a dog, for example, you have dry kibble versus wet or canned versus you have your fresh or frozen,
Freeze dried.
toppers, supplements. So all of these formats have different characteristics, and of course, they have their own pros and cons. And depending on which format you go with, that will dictate what ingredients you can and cannot use too. And then that all of those combined, when you talk about, you said shelf stability, now you have to look into, okay, if, for example, if you're making wet canned food, that's going to be a little bit more stable than, say, your fresh or frozen. Well, maybe not frozen, but fresh, right? When there are some things that are proven to be effective 100% of the time, such as your synthetic, right? Your synthetic, what do you call these? Antioxidants, if you will, or your mold inhibitors and whatnot. But because of the consumer trends that we see where they want to go all natural, vegan, or plant-based, we are limited on what we can use. So, and that is where I think a lot of the opportunities for my company kind of came about, is because we do specialize in plant extracts. And there are some actives and combinations of actives that can be effective in certain situations. Not in all. Some situations, there's still some chemical actives that are better. But, given the current situation that we have to work with what we can use. And so we still need to do our due diligence in testing. Okay, we want to see how this particular antioxidant that is all natural, plant-based, whatnot, works against, say, a BHT, right? You have to run those trials in order to effectively give recommendations on how to use them. Without those, you can't just guess, okay, well, you can replace 100% of BHT with maybe 200 ppm. It's hard to make that guess. You still need an educated guess, and in order to have an educated guess, you need to at least do some trials. And some companies are willing to do a lot of that trials, but not everyone does their due diligence. So it's a matter of, really trying to help the pet food companies make those decisions.
Where do you think, with all the different products, because when we talk about trials, we're used to repeating what a lysine requirement is for a pig, for instance, and if it may be different for a DNA versus top pig versus PIC pig. But now we're talking about shelf stability, and we talked about all the products we have, product forms. What do you think is the most challenging product form that for stability, long-term stability? Like, is it, you said canned food's better, or fresh? I would say fresh would be something combined. But what are some products that you're finding difficult that with shelf stability?
I think it'll definitely be fresh would have the shortest shelf life. I mean, these companies that make them have to either deliver the food to your door every so often, because you can't just store it for months at a time. If it's, say, frozen, then yeah, you can put it in your freezer for a while, but then that takes up freezer space. So like I said, there are pros and cons. Canned is a little bit more stable because, well, you kind of seal it off to the external environment. Your dry kibble would be intermediate, granted that you put the necessary ingredients in there to make it stable. So running stability trials, especially when you use new ingredients or you decided to go with a different antioxidant or mold inhibitor, you need to run those trials, whether you as a pet company or you as a supplier, so that you can make informed decisions. I mean, they're not easy. They take time, but if you don't do them, there could be dire consequences, right? So whatever solutions you use will have to depend on the ingredients that you are including in your diet.
No, I agree. It's different research, but necessary research.
Absolutely.
What has been the most fun thing about companion animal nutrition?
I want to say going to some of these expos and seeing, different kinds of treats, different kinds of supplements, dog toys, different cat litter. I don't have a cat, but that's why it's intriguing to me how there's so many different cat litter out there. But, meeting these companies that all have the same goal of making your pet healthy, right? I mean, it's not any different from going to, like, say, your swine expos, like your World Pork Expo, except it's a different crowd and a different, species you're working with. But it's really meeting the people, seeing what they have to offer, hearing their experiences. I'm a people person, so that's what I enjoy. And also going to the conferences. I was just at the national meeting recently, and they had a very, very, what do you call this? I lost my train of thought. Well, they had a companion animal symposium that was well organized. There were a lot of great speakers, and it's so interesting to hear some of the similarities that we do on the swine side that they also do, but also some of the things that are different. Like recently, at the national meeting, they talked about amino acid requirements. On the swine side, we're like, oh well, we got a lot of that figured out. You're just you're years behind. So that is a little bit interesting to me, but at the same time, there's a lot of room for improvement. It's just a matter of when we're gonna do that, who's gonna do that, and whether we're gonna keep doing that with new ingredients coming up, new information is coming up. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Well, I was going to say the biggest thing I've noticed working in this space is the transparency. And I think that's driven by the consumer. Because if you're smart enough now, maybe I am, because I've looked at enough feed labels and different things that you can almost recreate any product that's out there. And you go searching, a lot of the products are very same and probably made by the same manufacturers with just a different label.
Yes.
But I almost kind of like that philosophy, because if you look at a feed supplement or a feed nutrition company, I think that transparency takes it off the table that I'm trying to hide. And when I look at what we're doing in the swine nutrition world or the poultry nutrition world, the days of having a proprietary formula is going away. And I think we're almost going to the pet food side. And I wonder even if, and we say this, and this has been a philosophy of a couple other companies on the food side, is like the McDonald's of the world's driving what we're feeding our animals. And I think it is all going into that transparency. And that's the one nice thing I like working with the pet food. They know they have a gray area. They know they don't have everything perfected. And because their genetics are so diverse, I don't think you ever have a perfected product for a dog or a cat in my mind. But I do appreciate the transparency, because I don't have to guess what you're doing. You can kind of go with there now. Pricing, marketing, manufacturing, product type, and packaging, that's all different. And that's the differentiation out of there in the pet space versus us trying to, I feel like, oh, I can't talk about what I'm doing and I can't tell you what I'm doing. And I finally, even I think, hearing in our space now that I would say our generation or younger is coming into the leadership, that we're even becoming more open to conversations like that in animal agriculture, where traditionally it was very top secret, not transparent. And I think there's a lot to learn from the pet space about how that transparency is so important about how we work with our customers.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And this may sound like a shameless plug, but in our company, we really have this sustainability initiative, because we do work in the human industry, in food and beverage and nutraceuticals. So we need to have all those policies in place, because they do value traceability. And traceability is just one part of sustainability. And for the pet food side, you're right. They do value that. They want to, that is driven by consumers. They want to know, okay, is my protein sustainably sourced? Is my vegetable protein, grown in a sustainable way, or did it contribute to deforestation? So a lot of these, I think, are headed towards the correct direction, the right direction. But in terms of us on the swine side, you're right. I think, yeah, traditionally we've been a little secretive. I think that's also because what we do is not really seen by the common folk as much as what the pet food side is doing, because whatever the pet food side is doing, there's 1 degree of separation. The pet food manufacturer makes the food that goes to the hands of the end consumer. On the livestock side, that's not necessarily the case. So we never really figured that, oh, maybe we need to be a little bit more, or maybe we don't have to be transparent. We shouldn't put time and effort into doing that, because no one really cares. No one's going to look at this feed bag and the label of this feed bag other than the producer, right? So why do we have to put time and resource into what goes into that label? But that is something that will change drastically, I think, very soon, and for a good reason. And that this regulatory side is also something new to me, although not new to the company that I'm working with, but new to me personally. And there's still a lot of improvements, I believe, that can be done, but we're all headed towards the right direction.
No, I agree. I think I'm excited. And what I find interesting, going back to talk to the swine guys, is they want to hear about what I'm doing in other species. I work with poultry, rabbits, dogs, and cats now. They want to know what I'm hearing, what I'm learning. Is there something coming out? I'm now working with a ruminant group and some different products for silage. And what's exciting is being able to take these different components that I'm learning about here and there to help everybody. And I think that's been the most fun for me, is being able to learn from other species and bring it back to different, I'm always going to be a swine person at heart, but I'm also always been a cat and dog and rabbit person. They right now are taking over my house, and it's like a pack of not angry kittens, but playful, mischievous kittens.
That's why I don't have cats.
Yeah, and well, their research room needs to be built ASAP. I think that's my husband's motivation to get it done.
There you go.
To wrap this up a bit, what are some of the future goals you have? We can go beyond pet nutrition. We can talk about swine nutrition. And what are some future goals that you have for the field of nutrition and yourself in it?
Personally, I think goal number 1 is to get more involved in research again. I am a scientist at heart, so I think just getting involved in basic research, a little bit of applied research as well, is something that will always intrigue me. I'll always have interest in that, so I would like to get involved more. And I don't have the opportunity to go to farms as much anymore due to my current position, but that is something that I've always enjoyed. I guess another goal would be is to really be able to provide effective solutions to existing problems, and a lot of that is through research. So for example, what we're currently looking into is trying to see if there are some plant extracts or combination of plant extracts that can alleviate some existing problems in pets. I don't think it's a secret, so maybe I'll just say it. We're looking into bone and joint health. We're looking into liver health. We're looking into some other things that are a little bit more top secret, but it's doing those research, proving that there is application for those compounds and actives, and being able to give that to pet food companies or even livestock companies if that is something that they will find value in.
I was going to say, the pets are paying for it, but you may just come up with a solution for sow mortality and lameness.
That's not on the top of the list, but that is
who knows, right? My whole point is I've been chasing that my whole career. That's why I became a swine nutritionist, was due to lameness and sow mortality. And now seeing it in my own pets and myself, if there is nutritional solutions, that does excite me, but it does take research. It does take money. And everybody's saying, oh, you just want to do research to do research. And I'm like, no, the problem is that I run one trial and then it may answer one question, but then it gives me 5 new questions. And being realistic with my endeavors in my lifetime, I think is not going to be easy unless AI really helps us move leaps and bounds forward.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I probably shouldn't be saying this, but at my previous company, we developed a fiber product, and I wanted to use that product and kind of introduce it to the pet food industry. So I wanted that to be my into the pet food industry. So I started sprinkling a little bit of that into Whimsy's food and see if that'll improve her. At that time, she had some GI issues. So it did help for a little bit, and then it went back to normal, or it went back to how she was. So I did some experimenting on her, but that is, I mean, that's just curiosity, right? You always want to, as a scientist, you always have questions, and you'll never have answers to everything. Like you said, you'll always have questions, and the more answers you have, the more questions it generates. So that is just something that some people are just wired differently, I guess. But yeah, I guess another goal would be to get more work done in swine again. I've had a little bit of hiatus. I only go to a few shows a year on the swine side, but I'm coming back. Mark my words. There's been a little bit of a technicality in the past couple of years, but I will be back.
Well, no, we hope to have you back, and the same with me. And everybody asks, well, are you having fun? And I said, yes, because I'm learning and I'm curious and like, well, how can I apply this in pigs or chickens or, whatever I have. And there's definitely a world of information to learn. But I would say one thing that the pet people do right is they know how to entertain. And I would say from the food choices and the beverage choices, and you may pay more money to get in, but at least we are treated like a 5-star pet.
I would say yes, that is correct, but not all the time. I mean, you just gotta be in the right company. I mean, yeah, I do know some very good, people on the swine side and the poultry side who do know how to have a good time. So
Well,
you just
yes.
gotta find those people.
No, I'm just saying the shows and the expos are just so flamboyant compared to some of our shows, but you can
Oh
never
yeah,
replace World Pork Expo and the barbecue we have there.
oh yeah, oh yeah. You go to some of these pet expos and you get out of there with bags and bags of new dog toys. I mean, it's hard to beat that.
I know, because I went to the store to buy toys and I'm like, oh, it's getting spendy to treat my dogs. I was like, I'm just going to need to go to a butcher and get a beef bone instead of paying $14 for a bone.
Yep. 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 I've had that problem.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to have you, Diego, and thank you for working. I'm going to say one thing to the audience before we go about Diego.
Oh, yeah,
I have
absolutely.
known
Thank
you
you.
throughout your whole career as a student, and I'm not necessarily been a mentor, but I've been watching you develop in your career and working with you and seeing how you handle clients. Very impressive growth, and the swine industry is sure missing out on your talents as well.
Thank you for the kind words, Casey. And yeah, you are right. You've always been there when I started my I guess my grad school. You
Mhm.
were already there. I think you even visited Illinois when I was there as a master's student. So
I did, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Way
it's
long ago.
that's right. That's right. But no, I really appreciate the kind words, and I will be back in the swine industry pretty soon, so y'all don't gotta miss me too much.
Well, awesome. Until next time, because we will have some episodes coming up on different feed additives and nutrition components. So I know who to pull on for the botanicals and bring you guys back on. So thank you, Diego.
Thank you for having me.